Imagine this. You have just been born. You cannot speak, you cannot walk, you cannot even open your eyes wide enough to see the world clearly. And yet, the adults gathered around your cradle have already begun making a decision that will shape your body for the rest of your life. If you had been born in the Andes of Peru 2,000 years ago, they might have wrapped bands of cloth around your head so that your skull would gradually grow longer over time. If you had grown up in certain African tribes, your lips might have been slowly stretched with clay plates. If you had been born in China centuries ago, your feet might have been tightly bound while you were still very young, preventing them from ever developing naturally. If you had become a Polynesian warrior, your body might have been covered with intricate tattoos, painful works of art created over many years. And if you belonged to another community, you might have had your hair cut, or your head shaved, your ears pierced, your skin scarified, or endured rituals that would leave your body forever changed. The remarkable thing is, none of them believed they were doing anything unusual. Quite the opposite. They believed they were doing the right thing, an expression of love, a source of pride, a way of preparing a child for life. To them, the natural human body was not yet complete. It had to be shaped by culture, recognized by the community, marked with signs that could tell the world, "This is who I am," that makes humanity an almost unique case in the entire history of evolution. A lion does not choose its mane. A peacock does not design its magnificent tail. A deer does not decide the shape of its antlers. Nature shaped them all through millions of years of evolution. But human beings are the only species capable of looking at their own bodies and saying, "I want to change it." Not to heal an illness, not to survive another day, but to pursue something far more intangible: status, belief, beauty, and the feeling of belonging to a community. Anthropologists believe that the moment humans deliberately began reshaping their own bodies was also the moment culture first began influencing evolution. From that point forward, nature was no longer the only force deciding what human beings would look like. Society became part of the process as well. But that leads to an even more fascinating question. If changing our bodies does not help us run faster, does not make us physically stronger, does not help us live longer, why has nearly every civilization in history invented at least one way to transform the human body? Perhaps the answer lies in the fact that human beings have never seen the body as merely a body. To us, it is the very first language the world can see. If you meet someone today wearing a military uniform, you can almost instantly guess their profession. If you notice someone wearing a wedding ring, you naturally assume they may be married. A white medical coat immediately makes us think of a doctor. A formal gown tells us someone is attending an important ceremony. Within just a few brief seconds, the brain has already decoded an astonishing amount of information without a single word being spoken. But now imagine traveling back 10,000 years, before uniforms, before badges, before passports, before identity cards. How would you know who the person standing before you was? Which tribe did they belong to? Were they a warrior? Had they reached adulthood? What status did they hold within their community? Could they be trusted? That was the moment when the human body became humanity's very first identity card. Archaeological evidence shows that in many ancient cultures, a person's social position could often be recognized simply by looking at their body. A tattoo could reveal a family lineage. A scar across the face could show that someone had completed an initiation ceremony. An elongated skull could signal noble birth. Stretched earlobes could symbolize political authority or religious importance. Today, we usually think our identity exists on official documents. But throughout most of human history, identity was engraved upon the body itself. That did more than simply help communities recognize one another. It created something even more powerful: a sense of belonging. Evolutionary psychologists argue that human beings are among the most intensely social creatures on Earth. For hundreds of thousands of years, being accepted or rejected by one's community could directly determine whether a person lived or died. Someone expelled from the tribe would struggle to hunt, struggle to find food, struggle to defend themselves against predators, and struggle to raise children. In other words, belonging to a group was never merely an emotional need. It was once a matter of survival itself. That is why human beings began creating visible signs to recognize one another. Perhaps at first it was nothing more than colored earth painted across the skin. Later came bracelets carved from animal bones, then tattoos, scarification, distinctive hairstyles, sharpened teeth, elongated skulls. Every one of them communicated the same simple message: I belong to these people. The fascinating part is, those visible signs were never meant only for other people. They also transformed the person who carried them. When a young boy completed his coming-of-age ritual and received the first permanent scars upon his body, he was not only proving to his community that he had become an adult, he was also beginning to believe that he truly had become someone new. Cognitive scientists refer to this as the identity effect. When the body changes, the mind gradually changes the way it sees itself. An outward symbol can slowly become an inward conviction. Perhaps that is why, from prehistoric times to the present day, human beings have never stopped transforming their appearance. Not because we hate our natural bodies, but because we want our bodies to tell a story. A story about family, about community, about belief, or simply about the person we aspire to become. But if the body truly is a language, then there is something even stranger. Why have so many civilizations believed that this language only gains meaning when it is forged through pain? A paradox has followed humanity for tens of thousands of years. If given a choice, nearly every living creature avoids pain. A gazelle immediately runs the moment. A thorn pierces its foot. A wolf patiently licks its wounds until they heal. In nature, pain is a warning signal. It tells the brain, something is harming you. And yet, human beings repeatedly choose to do the exact opposite. We deliberately seek pain, not to destroy ourselves, but to become someone different. A Maori warrior sits for hours while chisels carved from bone slowly tattoo every inch of his face. A young woman in Ethiopia patiently stretches her lower lip, little by little, over many years. A boy in certain African tribes enters his initiation ceremony, knowing that deep cuts will be carved into his skin, leaving raised scars that will remain for the rest of his life. In ancient China, countless young girls endured years of agony as their feet were tightly bound throughout childhood, preventing them from ever developing naturally. Even today, millions of people continue to tattoo their bodies, pierce their skin, undergo cosmetic surgery, wear braces, or spend thousands of hours training to reshape their bodies into the image they desire. On the surface, these practices appear completely different, but anthropologists believe they all spring from the same profound motivation. Human beings are willing to endure pain, if that pain carries meaning. At first, this may seem difficult to understand, but think about a medal. Its value does not lie in the piece of metal itself, it lies in everything that had to be endured to earn it. A scar is no different. For many ancient societies, it was never simply evidence of injury. It was proof of courage. Proof that its bearer had overcome trials that not everyone could survive. Evolutionary psychologists call this costly signaling. The idea is surprisingly simple. If a symbol is too easy to obtain, anyone can pretend to possess it. But if that symbol demands years of commitment, sacrifice, or even pain, then it becomes infinitely more trustworthy. A full-body tattoo cannot be completed in a few minutes. An elongated skull requires years of careful shaping. Bound feet cannot be faked overnight. It is the price paid that transforms these marks into convincing evidence of commitment, not only to the community, but also to the person who bears them. What is remarkable is that this very same mechanism still exists in modern society. An Olympic athlete spends decades training to earn a single medal. A physician studies for more than 10 years before wearing a white coat. A soldier undergoes relentless training before earning the right to wear military rank. Even when the body itself is not permanently changed, human beings still believe that anything truly valuable must be earned through sacrifice. That is no longer a law of biology. It is a law of culture. Yet another question naturally follows. If pain serves as proof of commitment, why, across so many civilizations, were the people who altered their bodies the most often the very people who held the greatest power? How could an elongated skull, a pair of stretched ears, or a distinctive tattoo compel an entire community to bow before a single individual? Why could body modification become a symbol of power, and even of the divine? Imagine this. You are living in a small village 3,000 years ago. You have never seen your king. Then one day, the entire village is summoned to the central square. From the distance, a grand procession slowly approaches. At its center walks a single man. He does not appear taller because of his body, but because of the enormous ceremonial headdress upon his head. His earlobes have been stretched by the weight of massive golden earrings. He wears garments that no one else is permitted to wear. His face is painted in colors reserved exclusively for royalty. Even the way he walks is different from everyone around him. You have never heard him speak, yet your brain has already reached its conclusion. This is a man of power. That does not happen by accident. Anthropologists argue that power must first be seen before it can be exercised. A king cannot prove his strength through war every single day. A ruler cannot constantly remind everyone that he holds authority. Instead, he allows his own body to do the talking. In ancient Egypt, only the pharaoh was permitted to wear the sacred crown and the ceremonial false beard, the unmistakable symbols of divine kingship. Throughout the Andes, many noble families practiced intentional cranial modification and wore enormous earrings as visible signs of noble lineage. Among the Maya, the ruling elite reshaped their teeth, inlaid them with precious stones, and intentionally molded their children's skulls from infancy. In Japan, the samurai's distinctive topknot was never merely a hairstyle. It was a declaration that its wearer belonged to the warrior class. In medieval Europe, clothing, colors, and even the fabrics a person was allowed to wear were strictly regulated by law. Certain colors were reserved exclusively for the nobility. Certain furs could never be worn by ordinary people. On the surface, these appear to be nothing more than differences in appearance. But beneath them, they formed an extraordinarily sophisticated system of communication. Long before people learned to read, the body already knew how to speak. An elongated skull declared, "I belong to the ruling bloodline." A crown proclaimed, "I embody authority." A distinctive tattoo announced, "I have endured trials you have never faced." The fascinating part is, these symbols did not merely persuade other people. They also transformed the people who wore them. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as embodied cognition. When you put on the symbols of authority, you begin to behave like someone who possesses authority. When an entire society continually treats you as a king, your own brain gradually comes to believe that you were born to rule. It becomes a remarkable feedback loop. Symbols create belief. Belief shapes behavior. Behavior reinforces the symbol. And eventually, as generations pass, no one remembers where the symbol originally came from. People remember only one thing, that it belongs to those who stand above everyone else. But power is only one part of the story. Across countless civilizations, people transformed their bodies for an even more powerful reason. Not to become wealthier, not to inspire fear, but to become closer to the divine. Almost every civilization has asked the same profound question. How can an ordinary human being become sacred? This is not merely a religious question. It is a question about identity, about belief, and about the boundary between humanity and something greater than humanity itself. Throughout history, countless cultures believed that the body was more than the place where we lived. It was a bridge between the visible world and the invisible one. To change one's destiny, one first had to change the body. Anthropologists suggest that many rituals of body modification were never intended primarily to create beauty or display power. They marked a transformation, from child to adult, from ordinary person to warrior, from believer to priest, from an individual to a member of something infinitely greater than oneself. Consider Buddhist monks who shave their heads. It is not merely a hairstyle. It is a declaration that they have surrendered part of their ego in order to enter a spiritual life. In many Christian traditions, baptism symbolizes spiritual rebirth. In numerous Jewish and Islamic communities, circumcision is more than an ancient custom. It is understood as the visible sign of a covenant between humanity and God. Throughout Polynesia, tattoos are far more than works of art. Every line etched into the skin tells the story of one's family, ancestors, achievements, and responsibilities. A body without tattoos is considered a story that has not yet been finished. What is especially remarkable is that these rituals rarely took place in silence. They were accompanied by prayer, music, fire, water, smoke, sacred symbols, and the witness of the entire community. All of these transformed a physical change into a deeply spiritual event. Cognitive scientists suggest that the human brain is especially sensitive to ritual experiences. When an event is reinforced through powerful symbols, sounds, and emotions, the brain remembers it as a genuine turning point in life. That is why so many people vividly remember the day they graduated, the day they were married, the day they took an oath, or the day they became parents. Ritual tells the brain, from this day forward, I am no longer the person I was yesterday. This also helps explain why so many civilizations connected pain with transformation. Not because they worshipped suffering, but because pain creates memories that are extraordinarily difficult to forget. Once people endured those trials, they genuinely felt that they had become someone new. It was no longer merely an idea. It became an experience permanently engraved upon both body and mind. Perhaps that is why, for tens of thousands of years, human beings have continued to use the body as a canvas upon which they write their deepest beliefs. Not because the body itself needs to change, but because the mind needs a symbol powerful enough to believe that a new life has truly begun. Why does beauty keep changing, yet we never stop chasing it? And yet, there is something even more intriguing. If all of these standards are creations of human culture, why has our idea of beauty changed constantly throughout history, while humanity has never stopped pursuing it? If you could travel across the entire span of human history, you would probably find yourself endlessly bewildered. What one culture considers beautiful, another may see as strange. What one era celebrates may become unfashionable only a few centuries later. In ancient China, the smaller a woman's feet were, the more refined and noble she was believed to be. Among certain African communities, stretched lips were admired as symbols of beauty and maturity. Within the Kayan communities of Southeast Asia, elongated necks have long been regarded as one of the highest standards of attractiveness. The Maya sharpened their teeth into points and inlaid them with precious stones as symbols of nobility. During the European Renaissance, a fuller body represented wealth, prosperity, and good health. Today, across much of the world, those ideals have almost completely reversed. A lean physique, defined muscles, healthy skin, or a symmetrical face have become widely admired ideals. That raises a fascinating question. If beauty is constantly changing, can there truly be such a thing as absolute beauty? Modern research suggests that the answer is both yes and no. Certain features appear to be valued across many different cultures: a symmetrical face, healthy skin, bright, alert eyes, or physical characteristics that signal health and reproductive fitness. These are cues that evolution has taught the human brain to recognize over countless generations. But beyond those biological foundations, most of what we call beauty is created by culture. In other words, the human brain does not merely learn to recognize beauty. It also learns what society tells it should be beautiful. A child is not born believing that short hair is more attractive than long hair. A child does not instinctively know which skin tone is considered beautiful, nor whether tattoos represent art or rebellion. Every one of those ideas is learned from family, from the community, from stories, and today, from the media. That is why standards of beauty can change far more rapidly than our genes. Genes require thousands of years to evolve. A cultural trend can change in only a matter of months. Think about that. Only a century ago, tanned skin in many Western countries was associated with outdoor labor and poverty. Today, it is often seen as a symbol of health, travel, and an active lifestyle. The skin itself did not change, only the meaning society attached to it. Social psychologists suggest that people rarely pursue beauty for beauty's sake alone. We pursue what beauty represents: admiration, acceptance, confidence, or the feeling that we belong to a particular group. In other words, behind every beauty standard lies an even deeper human need: the need to be seen, to be accepted, to be loved. Perhaps that is why, for tens of thousands of years, humanity has continually transformed its hair, skin, face, and body. Not because we are so different from one another, but because all of us are searching for exactly the same thing, a place in the world where we belong. But if status, belief, and beauty are all simply different paths toward gaining acceptance from our community, then could there be an even deeper reason why our ancestors first began altering their bodies tens of thousands of years ago? Perhaps the answer does not lie in outward appearance, but in a need that has helped humanity survive far longer than any beauty standard ever could: the need to belong. If there is a single invisible thread connecting every story we have explored today, it is not tattoos, not elongated skulls, not bound feet, nor necks lengthened with brass rings. It is the longing to belong. For hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, human beings have never been the strongest creatures on Earth. We do not possess the claws of a tiger, the speed of a cheetah, the wings of a bird, or the thick hide of a rhinoceros. If one person were forced to survive alone in the wilderness, their chances would be almost non-existent. But if 10 people worked together, everything changed. They could hunt larger prey, share food, care for children, protect the elderly, stand watch through the night, and perhaps most importantly, pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Anthropologists believe that humanity's greatest strength has never been physical power. It has always been our ability to cooperate with vast numbers of people who are not related by blood. Few, if any, other species can achieve cooperation on such a scale. But cooperation can only exist when people feel that they belong to the same group. And that is where the body became one of humanity's most powerful tools. The same tattoo, the same hairstyle, the same ritual scars, the same elongated skull. All of them communicated one simple message: you are one of us. That may sound like something from the distant past, but look around us today. A national team jersey, a wedding ring, a military uniform, a graduation gown, a company badge, a t-shirt bearing the logo of your favorite band, or even a profile picture on social media. Every one of them is a modern answer to the same question our ancestors first asked tens of thousands of years ago: who do I belong to? Psychologists have discovered that social rejection activates many of the same regions of the brain associated with physical pain. In other words, being excluded is not merely an emotional experience. The brain experiences it as a genuine injury. Perhaps that is why human beings willingly invest so much time, money, and effort simply to be accepted. Sometimes, we change the way we dress, sometimes our hairstyle, sometimes even the way we speak, and sometimes our bodies themselves. Not because we hate who we are, but because we fear being left outside the group. That instinct has been with humanity ever since the first hunter-gatherer bands walked the earth. And perhaps the most remarkable thing of all is this: it is that very instinct that made civilization possible. Without belonging, there would have been no tribes. Without tribes, there would have been no cities. Without cities, there would have been no nations. And perhaps, no civilization as we know it today. That realization transforms the meaning of elongated skulls, tattoos, and rituals of body modification. They are not merely strange customs from a distant past. They are evidence that, from the very beginning, human beings understood something that modern science has only gradually begun to confirm: that an individual becomes truly strong only when they feel they are part of something greater than themselves. Perhaps that is why humans became the only species to turn the body into a story of identity, of community, of belief, and above all, of our timeless desire to be seen, to be accepted, to belong. But if everything begins with that longing, then what is it that truly makes human beings different from every other living creature on Earth? Perhaps the answer lies in our extraordinary ability to transform invisible ideas into visible reality. And that brings us to the final chapter of today's journey. What truly makes human beings different? Now, take one last look at everything we have explored together. An elongated skull in ancient Peru, the intricate tattoos covering the bodies of Polynesian warriors, the tiny bound feet of women in ancient China, the brass rings encircling the necks of Kayan women, the ritual scars carved across the faces of African tribes. At first glance, these seem like completely different stories, different cultures, different eras, different beliefs. But if you look more deeply, you begin to realize that every one of them is trying to answer the very same question. What makes a human being who they are? Not how tall they are, how much they weigh, or what genes they inherited, but rather what they belong to, what they believe in, and what story they choose to tell about themselves. Anthropologists believe that this is precisely what sets humanity apart from the rest of the natural world. Animals have bodies, but only human beings transform the body into a symbol. A wolf does not look at its fur and see a badge of honor. An eagle does not regard its wings as a symbol of faith. But human beings can look at a tattoo and see the history of an entire family. Look at a wedding ring and see a lifelong promise. Look at a military uniform and see duty and responsibility. Look at an elongated skull and see both power and mythology. That is possible only because human beings are the only species capable of living in two worlds at once: a world of matter and a world of meaning. A piece of metal is simply metal until it becomes a crown. A piece of cloth is simply cloth until it becomes a flag. A body is simply a body till human beings decide that it will tell a story. Research in cognitive science suggests that our remarkable ability to assign meaning to objects and symbols is what has enabled humanity to cooperate with millions of complete strangers. We did not build civilizations through physical strength alone. We built them upon the invisible ideas that entire societies chose to believe together. Law, money, nations, religion, honor, status, beauty. Every one of them is invisible. Yet those invisible ideas possess the power to reshape the visible world. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest invention. Not the wheel, not fire, not metal, but the extraordinary ability to transform an idea into reality simply because millions of people choose to believe in it. And the human body was the very first place where we learned how to do exactly that. For tens of thousands of years, human beings have continually reshaped their hair, their skin, their faces, their feet, and even their skulls. Not because we have never been satisfied with ourselves, but because we have always wanted to tell the world something that words alone could never fully express. That we belong, that we believe, that we love, that we are willing to sacrifice, and that we hope to be remembered. Perhaps that is why the question, why are humans the only species that deliberately reshape their own bodies in pursuit of status, belief, and beauty, has never truly been about the body. It is about something far more extraordinary: our ability to transform biology into culture, instinct into symbol, and an individual into a living part of history. Because in the end, what truly makes human beings different is not the shape of our bodies. It is our ability to look at those bodies and imagine that they can become something greater. That is why we build civilizations. That is why we create art. That is why we tell stories. And that is why, after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, every generation continues to leave its mark upon the body, upon culture, and upon history itself. For in the end, human beings do not live only by what we are. We also live by what we choose to become. Perhaps what has always made human beings truly extraordinary has never been that we possess larger brains or more skillful hands. Perhaps it is the simple fact that we can look at our own bodies and transform them into a story of identity, of belief, of status, and of the timeless desire to belong to something greater than ourselves. The elongated skulls of ancient Peru, the intricate tattoos of Polynesian warriors, the bound feet of women in ancient China, or the brass neck rings worn by the Kayan people. At first glance, they seem to have nothing in common, but perhaps they are all telling the very same story. The story that human beings do not live by biology alone. We also live by meaning. So what about you? If you had been born into a civilization 3,000 years ago, would you have been willing to reshape your own body, to be accepted by your community, to express your social status, or to move closer to your deepest beliefs? Or do you believe those customs were simply products of a world that has long since disappeared? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd genuinely love to hear your perspective and discover how you see this question. And if you enjoy documentary films that explore history, anthropology, human evolution, and the great questions about the nature of humanity through the lens of science, Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming journeys. In our next episode, we'll explore an even more fascinating question. Why are humans the only species that feel shame? Thank you for joining me on today's journey. Till next time, I'll see you in the next video.